This is part 2 and the main part of this big expose. Yes, with the help of accurate data and facts, I want to continue protecting viewers from the lies or misinformation that the YouTube channel Dhruv Rathee has spread through its video on World Happiness Report 2021. But before I begin, if you are from India, Pakistan or Finland, please grab a pen and a paper if you can. And if you can't, just make sure that you listen to every sentence very carefully. Okay, so this episode has 2 points. In point 1 of this episode, I will reveal the Global Happiness Index from the Gallup International that probably no media outlet or social media influencer has ever told you about. And yes, I will show you how in that particular index, India ranks higher than Pakistan and even Finland in terms of happiness. So please hold your seats tight and don't go anywhere. In point 2, to protect viewers from incorrect information or lies, I will talk about some more mistakes that the YouTube channel Dhruv Rathee has spread through its video on World Happiness Report 2021. Yes, according to what I have watched so far on that channel, it seems that the average speed at which the YouTuber makes mistakes is 1 mistake per minute. Yes, you heard that right, a mistake frequency rate of 1 mistake per minute. Let me also clarify that concerning Dhruv Rathee's video on the World Happiness Report 2021, 4 mistakes were covered in the first part, and I hope you have watched that video of mine. In this part 2, I will cover his other mistakes that I couldn't cover in the previous episode. Also remember, after you finish watching this episode, please allow yourself to gain a better understanding of my work by watching these 4 playlists, and in particular, this particular episode of mine, which exposes the hypocrisy and the lesser-known horrific sides of the so-called happiest Scandinavian countries. It is highly, highly recommended. Alright, now let's focus on point number 1. Did you know that the World Happiness Report is not the only one that attempts to study happiness or subjective well-being? For example, Switzerland-based Gallup International also conducts a survey to observe happiness in different parts of the world. And their latest survey results clearly show that Indians are happier than people in Pakistan, Germany, and even Finland. Yes, you heard it right. According to the survey results from Zurich-based GIA, Indians are happier than people in Finland. You can see it right here on your screen. These are the results based on GIA end-of-year survey 2020. Not only that, the survey also reveals that India is among the happiest places in the world in recent years. Yes, pay attention to these words. India among the happiest places in the world in recent years. Zurich-based GIA says that. Not only that, the report also mentions that the European Union, lately, is also among the less fortunate places. Also, please focus on this. In this survey, at 18%, Pakistan was found to have the largest percentage of very unhappy people among all surveyed nations. And notice the large percentage of Indians and Pakistanis in the very happy category. You can do a cross-country comparison yourself. And of course, don't forget to notice that in terms of net score, India beats Pakistan, Finland and Germany. And in the list of these 47 countries, in terms of net score, there are only 13 countries which are ahead of India. Now, this brings us several questions. To start with, why this happiness index in which India performs reasonably well has been kept hidden from many of you, and why is the mainstream media not talking about this? Is it because if more and more people find out that people in India and other non-Western nations are already happier than people in many Western nations, it might impact the Western leadership of the world? After all, these days happiness is being considered more important than GDP, right? Or would they rather prefer that India continues to be presented as one of the least happy and miserable nations? Besides all this, I want to ask, where are all the think tanks and the Indian advocacy groups responsible for working for India's global image and brand? After all, a Zurich-based association has recently regarded India as among the happiest places in the world in recent years, and it seems that you have no clue about it. Anyway, GIA is not a newcomer in this field. It was founded in 1947 and is the leading independent global association in market research and polling. But I should also point out that this is not the only global survey in which India beats Western nations when it comes to happiness. For example, in World Values Survey, India beats Germany and several other Western nations in happiness. And yes, it is also extremely important to note that both these surveys actually ask respondents a direct question regarding happiness. Point 2. Now let's put these two lesser-known surveys aside and focus on the World Happiness Report 2021, Dhruv Rathee's video on it, and his mistakes in that video. So, 4 mistakes of his were covered in the previous episode of mine. Here I'm starting with his mistake number 5. 5 minutes and 36 seconds into the video, Dhruv Rathee says, "There is a 7th criterion as well, which is defined as a dystopia." That's wrong. The so-called 7th criterion, or rather the 7th segment in each bar, is actually a sum of 2 components, dystopia and residual. Please note that the 7th segment is not only about dystopia. By the way, in the 2021 report, dystopia score is 2.43, and the other component, residual, simply represents that part of the national average letter score that is not explained by their model. Remember, this score that you see here is also referred to as the national average letter score. In the previous episode, we observed how the YouTuber seemed clueless about the report's methodology or about how the so-called happiness is calculated. In particular, he didn't appear to understand what these 6 factors are here for. To be honest, this is an awful mistake. Yes, anyone who thinks that these 6 factors are used to calculate happiness to establish the ranking of happiness is absolutely wrong. In other words, it can even be said that if the report didn't have these 6 factors at all, the rankings of these countries would have stayed the same because they don't depend on any of these 6 factors or on the questions that are asked regarding some of those 6 factors. Want to know why? The scores you see over here is the national average response to the question displayed right here on your screen. The responses are in numerical form because respondents submit their answers via the control letter. And that is how they get this national average letter score for each country. That's it. Now there are some users who may find it a bit difficult to understand the complex language of the report. So may I also propose a small exercise in a very simple language that can help you understand that these 6 factors are not used to establish these countries' ranking of happiness. Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? Don't get confused. This particular one is number 7. The 6 factors end here. Now consider this. These are the 6 factors that, according to Dhruv Rathee, are used to calculate the so-called final score for the countries, right? Now focus on these 2 countries, Guatemala and Singapore. Now please pay attention. In the 2021 report, Singapore outperforms Guatemala in all the 6 factors, but Guatemala beats Singapore in this ranking of happiness. Want to know why? Because on average, Guatemala's respondents self-evaluate their life better in this question, leading to Guatemala's higher national average letter score. And yes, this question, which is right here on your screen, is the one that determines countries' position in the ranking of happiness and not those 6 factors. This is the very reason why the 7th segment of this bar has a component called the residual error that researchers of the report say that their model does not explain. Viewers should ask the YouTuber Dhruv Rathee that if he really believes that these 6 factors are used to calculate the so-called final score to determine this country's rankings, then how come Singapore is not above Guatemala, as Singapore outperforms Guatemala in all these 6 factors in the 2021 World Happiness Report? Now, let's focus on Dhruv Rathee's mistake number 6 and 7. 5 minutes and 14 seconds into the video, Dhruv Rathee explains the methodology in Hindi that you can read right here on your screen. Again, I'm sorry, but what kind of methodology is he trying to explain here? 8 highest score, 0 lowest score? He even presents a very strange-looking formula 5 minutes and 27 seconds into the video. How did this YouTuber even come up with all this? I mean, this seems to be quite an imagination. Anyway, this is horribly wrong and misleading. This is not the way how these countries' scores are calculated. As mentioned earlier, these scores are just the national average response to this question. In other words, these scores that you are seeing here are not calculated on the basis of GDP per capita, healthy life expectancy, and on the basis of the responses to the questions that are asked in relation to generosity, social support, freedom to make life choices, and perceptions of corruption. So what is the purpose of those 6 factors then? Well, by calculating the values of those 6 factors, researchers are trying to answer or explain what may have been the possible source of respondents' self-ratings in this question. This also means that even if researchers had chosen some other factors in their model, it would not have an impact on these countries' happiness rankings. For example, if researchers had decided to remove social support and generosity from their model and instead had used, let's say, love for environment and love for animals, their ranking of happiness would have remained the same. Anyway, there are many other mistakes left in the YouTuber's video. It seems that I will need to release a part 3 to cover them. In that episode, I will also talk about the limitations of these types of surveys and studies. It is understandable that many self-styled educators end up spreading fake news, lies, or end up misinterpreting studies, possibly due to their limited ability to understand the complex methodologies. But there shouldn't be any shame in that. We are all humans and humans make mistakes. I hope the YouTuber accepts this as a friendly fact-checking and a good-hearted constructive criticism that might help him improve his work. Very politely, I appeal to the YouTuber to self-correct the remaining mistakes in his video on World Happiness Report 2021, so that I do not have to make more explanatory videos to protect viewers from incorrect information. Anyway, regarding the World Happiness Report, it is important to point out that this question seems to be more about life satisfaction than happiness. And yes, on the basis of this question, the World Happiness Report prepares these countries' rankings in which Finland is positioned at number 1, India at 139 and Pakistan at 105 in its 2021 edition. Thank you for your time and I hope to see you again.